All right, so I watched a couple of NBA games. I watched flying from Portland, Oregon, back to LA. I was in Portland over the weekend. I watched the Mavericks and the Suns the entire game. I called it, KD's good. Nobody saw that coming. He's a really easy fit with Phoenix. Phoenix isn't great defensively, and it's going to be an issue, and they're not terribly deep. Little Cameron Payne here. That's the bench goes about 2 deep, maybe 3 deep. But they don't have a ton off the bench, and I do think it'll probably be their undoing against a team that's much deeper, like a Golden State or the Clippers. Clippers have their own issues now with Westbrook. But my takeaway is I really believe that Dallas would be fun to watch but have defensive liabilities. Fact, it's true. And that Phoenix would be really good, and they're better defensively, so they're going to start winning and winning quickly. But Kevin Durant is so much more than an offensive player. And isn't it interesting to watch him, Kyrie, and Westbrook all go to new teams and how easy it looks for Kevin Durant? He is the best plug-and-play guy on the planet. He doesn't need the ball. He doesn't need the ball early in the rotation. Get him the ball, 5 seconds on the clock, you're going to get a great look. Phoenix is a really interesting team. I think they're going to have to win some shootouts. I think they'll win a series or two. Devin Booker and Kevin Durant are 2 of the top 10 offensive players, in my opinion, in the NBA. But I think depth will be a little undoing, and their defense, which you saw against the Mavericks. Also, watch the Warriors play the Lakers. Great effort by the Lakers. Anthony Davis, again, what's frustrating is when he's on, when he's engaged, when he's healthy, he's a monster. He is a monster. He made a great basket late against Draymond Green on the baseline. It really sealed the game as the Warriors had hit a couple of threes and roared back. Lakers got off to a good lead, never looked back, shorthanded without LeBron. It's a more legitimate roster. Lonnie Walker had some moments. Reeves had some moments. And Anthony Davis was amazing. I think Golden State's going to be fine. Steph didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but their ball movement, their spacing continues to be a marvel and the best in the league. I just think when I watch the Warriors, Steph's not quite there yet, but the passing, and I watched the last 4 or 5 Warrior games, the passing is immediately exceptional the minute Steph Curry is back. The pace is better, the passing's better. He was just a little off. And if you're not watching the Warriors, Klay Thompson is having himself a year. He's not the defender he used to be. Dude is having himself one of the best years of his career. But it was a nice win for the Lakers, shorthanded. It's a real roster now. And again, I've said before, if they played Denver first round, I would take the Lakers in 6 or 7 games. I really would. I think when Anthony Davis is dialed in, there's just not many guys like him. I remember years ago, I was covering a Laker-Blazer series. It was Shaq Kobe, went 7 games. Lakers won. It's the iconic Kobe to Shaq alley-oop slam. I was right behind that basket. And I remember during that series, I've told this story before, I asked Phil Jackson, how do you defend Rasheed Wallace? And he said, we don't. We don't really have any way to stop Rasheed Wallace. And I think on most nights in the NBA, there's no real way. I mean, Draymond Green was ineffective, and he's the best defender in the league. There's no real way to defend Anthony Davis. He can give you 35 a night if he plays 36 minutes. He is an absolute force, and I thought it was as good a game as he's had, and this is why they brought him to Los Angeles. LeBron was aging. LeBron plays fewer minutes. LeBron's going to get dinged up and miss games. So one of the games of the year for Anthony Davis got help from Reeves, Lonnie Walker, but a nice W for the Lakers. Playing well without LeBron. That's a promising sign. So the last 2 years, I have watched less and less NFL Combine. And I'm going to describe right now, and this could bore some of you, but one of the reasons I love coming on this podcast, that it's different than my show podcast, is I can take on topics and discuss things that I would never discuss, obviously, on my show. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of the way I do this business. So I've always said, you drive the bus. I'm not loyal to platforms, and I'm not loyal to leagues. When I started in this business, I did a lot more college football. Then it got very regional. And over the last 7, 8, 9 years with Alabama and Clemson's dominance, I did less college football. This year, I did more college football than I've ever done because I thought the West Coast had a little bit of a renaissance. Michigan had a renaissance. So I want the Michigans and the USCs and the Notre Dames to be viable, not just 3 Southern schools. And so I talked more college football, and the ratings went up in college football. So 15 years ago, I moved off baseball. Why? Because I watched the ratings, and I watched slowly the attendance go down, and the ratings go down, and the social currency go down. And so I am loyal to what you're watching. Okay, it's like it's a grocery store. What you're buying, I'm selling. And so the NFL Combine doesn't get huge ratings. But in the last couple of years, I used to really be into it. Not as much as the draft or the season or the playoffs or college football, but I like the Combine. It's a beauty pageant. I always understood that. But when Sean McVay says, I'm not going, this year Bill Belichick, Matt LaFleur, I'm not going. I had a conversation with a general manager in the NFL earlier last week. And, I threw out my theory to him that was, I said, if you told a young person, Trent Dilfer told me this years ago, 75% of NFL players don't love football. They love what football provides for them, but they don't really love football. Tony Gonzalez, the Hall of Fame tight end, once told me he thought 3% of players loved the game. Loved the game. Not the lifestyle, the game. And putting in the effort for the game. And so one of the things I've thought a lot about with the Combine is I think more teams get fooled than actually find a gem. Because if you go to the last 10 drafts and you look at some of the great Combine performances, teams are overdrafting players. And so when you combine some of the reaches in the draft with Dilfer and Tony Gonzalez's theory, let me just throw this out to you. If I told you, listen, if you work really hard for the next 8 to 10 weeks and get in the best shape of your life, you're going to be richer than you ever dreamed. And you're going to go first or second round, even though a year ago you were thought of as a third or a fourth rounder. Would you put in the work? Of course you would. Much different than playing a season, than working out in Arizona or Miami at an academy for 8 to 10 weeks, prepping for the interviews, getting abs back, putting in the time that you would have to put in on a daily basis if you were an NFL player. So you get these guys that come in and they're in the best shape of their life. They know exactly the questions they'll be asked. And I think what happens is people get fooled. People get absolutely fooled. And I think it's our human nature. If we're going to be rewarded, we're going to really focus. And that's why, to me, Belichick, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, I'm going to pass. They don't want to get fooled. Go watch game tape. Game tape's the truth because you have to play hurt in games. You have to play against people that are bigger and stronger than you. How do you react to that? That's the NFL. That's real. A game tape in the SEC or Big Ten, that's real. A real performance. Not 10 to 12 weeks of working out in Arizona and Miami, getting in the greatest shape of your life, therefore getting a payday soon thereafter in the NFL draft. It's not real life. And, and I think for all of us, I want to see your actual resume, job performance. What were you like for 4 to 5 years at your job? Not prepping for an interview with me. Players now prep for the Wonderlic. You can practice the Wonderlic. It used to be if a guy scored high, it was just he was brilliant. Now guys score in the 30s, and I think some of the times I'm like, I don't know, they make really bad decisions as a quarterback. How do they get a 36 on the Wonderlic? So I see the numbers for the Combine. I've peeled back on my Combine talk. I just don't think it's as relevant as I thought it was years ago. And I'll give you another example of this is college basketball. So 20 years ago, I was working in local sports. 25 years ago, I was in Las Vegas covering Jerry Tarkanian in UNLV. College basketball was arguably, along with college football, my favorite sport. I used to be much more into college sports 25 years ago. Now I like college football more. But college basketball, I have waned over the last 10 to 12 years. And for the obvious reasons. The numbers have plummeted. People still watch the tournament and the brackets, but they don't watch the regular season. And there's a reason for it. It's confusing. It is such a transactional sport now. The very best players, in fact, the 2 best players in this year's NBA draft are not even playing college. They've opted out of college. Many of the other great players are international. None of us have a visceral connection to them. We don't watch them play in Dusseldorf, Lithuania. And then maybe the 8 or 10 best college players, they just stay 1 year in college. So by the time you meet them in March Madness, they're off. They're off to the pros. So that makes it less, unless you live in a Spokane or an East Lansing or a Louisville and you've got your team you just love, for the majority of the audience that watches me, they don't. And so it's just a turnstile of players. Now, over the last 2 years, we've added the transfer portal. Well, it's insane. Literally there's 360 Division I programs. Half the rosters are now leaving to go somewhere else. So the transactional nature of college basketball between the one and done culture and the transfer portal, I think really hurts the sport, and I don't think there's any coming back. It's hard to follow. Now, I will say this. I've watched UCLA, which is 8 minutes from my house. I've watched them play 3 to 4 times. They're as good as anybody I've seen in the country. There's my expert opinion. I've watched Purdue 3 or 4 times. They're as good as anybody not named UCLA. I've watched Duke and Kansas 3 or 4 times. Very good teams. Don't think they're as good as Purdue or UCLA. But the Big Ten doesn't have a history of winning national titles. You have to go back a long way to remember the last Big Ten national champ. So, but this all goes back to the process of what I do. I really follow you. So right now my shows on FS1 and Premiere are about 60% NFL, 60-65%, about 25% NBA, a lot of it in April, May, and June. And then about 5 to 8% college football. I include the draft in that coverage. I'll cover the World Cup. I'll cover a big fight. An unbelievable Masters gets a segment or 2, little bit of March Madness. But I find the NFL Combine and college basketball, I'm not loyal to platforms and I'm not loyal to events. You tell me what you like. And I think people in the NFL are realizing with the Combine, you're as likely or more likely to get fooled by the Combine as you are find a gem or a diamond in the rough.